Wasn't quite on the level of like Madeline Miller for me in terms of like devastating heartbreak and crushing emotions. Next, I wrote A Winter's Promise, and but I hated reading on that weekend for some reason, for who these characters are. And everyone laughed at me because it got auto-posted to Twitter. Hello my angels, welcome back to another video. Today we are doing my August wrap-up. So I am absolutely on fire these past few months. I initially at the beginning of the year decided to do quarterly wrap-ups because I was reading about 4 books a month. Last month I read 15 books, this month I've read 11. It's going pretty well. I definitely thought that I would go down since I started work this month, but I've absolutely smashed it. And I completed my TBR this month for the first time ever in my whole life. So I'm very proud of myself. Without further ado, let's just jump right into the stats. I am not going to talk too much about my thoughts on each book because I did do 2 vlogs full of my thoughts of these books. One for the Merlin Readathon and one just for the last 2 weeks of August. Side note, I am moving to weekly vlogs because there is way too much and I don't want to be giving you 50-minute vlogs every 2 weeks. I'd rather give you a 20-minute to 30-minute one every week. It's way easier on Jordan and it's way easier on your time and energy. So in August, like I said, I read 11 books, making a total of 3,727 pages, which is pretty fucking good, if I may say so myself. I read 1 audiobook, 1 ebook, and 9 physical books. So I've been tackling that physical TBR, and I am doing the same in September, hopefully. So first of all, let's go through my Merlin Readathon books. So the first book I read was Legendborn. This was incredible. This is probably one of the top books of the year, to be honest. This is an Arthurian retelling set in America. A lot of Welsh is used. Our main character, Bree, is black and basically kind of one of the only black people at this university. She is actually 16 and went on to like a boosted program or something, so it is definitely YA, but I'm really hoping that throughout this, I think it's going to be trilogy, that the characters grow up, because I've sensed some real chemistry between some of the characters, and it feels weird, obviously, when they're 16 to be thinking that. I think I'm getting to be an age where, like, it's starting to feel weird. But yeah, I'm sensing chemistry between her and 2 guys, and I like them both, but there obviously is always one you prefer, and I'm really, really hoping that it ends in polyamory. I don't know. I feel like there's been such subtle hints towards it that I'm not sure if I'm just reading too much into it, but I'm really hoping that there is. The second book's title has come out recently. It's called Bloodmarked, which is quite cool because I thought they would change it to something born every time, which is what you would expect, but Bloodmarked is very unexpected, so I'm really happy with the second title, hoping we get a cover soon. Loved all the characters, loved all of the world building and the idea between root magic and like the magic that the Arthurian secret society has. This is definitely academic. I wouldn't say dark academia, but it's starting to lean towards it. There's secret societies and stuff, so if you are into that, I would definitely recommend this. Bree does go through a lot of racism, microaggressions. She's basically trying to beat the patriarchy and her white oppressors all in one. And it's a big job. And the way that Tracy Dion like writes it is so real. I felt like I was truly watching a friend like go through this, and it was so realistic. It was just really, really good, really incredible. Like from slight interactions with like a principal thinking that she was, you know, acting out, all the way up to like an interaction with a police officer. Oh, it's just, it's so good. It's done so well. And all of the commentary and like the background commentary is so just incredible. That's the reason I've spoken so much about this one. The others I will not speak about so much, but this one was my favourite book of the month. I have written it down as my favourite book of the month. So this is the one that gets the most screen time. Yay! Next up, I read Ariadne by Jennifer Saint, and this is a retelling, obviously, of Greek myth about Ariadne. Ariadne is the Minotaur's sister, so it talks about her journey, how she helped Theseus to kill the Minotaur and get out of the labyrinth. And that actually only happens near the beginning of the book, so there's a lot more of the book about Ariadne's story and journey and what happens to her afterwards. I won't say what it is. It's obviously, Greek myths are quite well known, but I didn't know this myth going in. I only knew about the Minotaur, so I didn't know her story afterwards. I thought it was really beautifully written. I really liked the way the story went and the prose. I ended up giving this 4 stars. Wasn't quite on the level of like Madeline Miller for me in terms of like devastating heartbreak and crushing emotions. So she kind of had that standard to live up to, unfortunately for her. But there is a new cover for this coming out in a couple of weeks for some reason. It's going to be white with like blue stuff on it. I bought it so that I can gift this to a friend, because this is also a signed edition, so I'm going to gift this to a friend instead and keep the white special edition. This author also has a new book coming out in April, if anyone's interested, called Electra, which will be obviously a retelling of the myth with Electra in. I don't know that myth, but I'm excited to read about it. Next, I wrote A Winter's Promise, Next, I read A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabot, or Dabos, I think it is, which this is a French translated book, which is like polar fantasy. So in this world, the main character, whose name I have forgotten, Ophelia. The main character, Ophelia, she lives on like an animus. It's set in the future because the Earth has been destroyed, I think by like climate change, and just in general, there's a feeling that humans destroyed the Earth. So each arc kind of has specific powers. Ophelia's arc has kind of like powers where they can read objects, so if they touch something they can read the history of it. Ophelia in particular is very good at this and can go back kind of further than anyone else into the object's history. She can also move through mirrors as if they are teleportation, but the mirrors can't be too far apart, so she couldn't go from like arc to arc. This was a little bit boring. It was a little bit too long. I didn't find that I really cared about any of the characters except Ophelia. Everyone else pissed me off. I didn't care about anyone else. I didn't like the love interest. I feel like it's going to turn out that he is going to fall in love with her. It's very strange. But they hate each other. It's like an arranged marriage. She goes to a different arc, which is very dangerous and has like 3 different types of powers. There's kind of loads of politics going on. This is very dense. I just didn't find it as exciting and magical as I thought I would, unfortunately. That's kind of all I need to say about it. I gave it 3 stars. It was like a low 3 stars, but yeah. The last book that I read for the Merlin Readathon was Assassin's Apprentice, and this was gifted to me by Jordan. He bought it for me for one of our anniversaries, and this is the illustrated version, which is obviously gorgeous. I gave this 5 stars. Who knew? This was definitely a surprise to me. I thought it was going to be maybe, you know, like a 4-star or something. I expected something along the lines of Brandon Sanderson type stuff, but maybe not with an explosive ending, because I haven't heard anything about explosive endings for Robin Hobb. Obviously, Brandon Sanderson's quite notorious for that. But this really surprised me. Despite actually not much happening in the book, I feel, I still really enjoyed the characters and the journey that Fitz went through in this book, and the ending was really good. The way that the plot kind of all came together and the action scenes near the end and like the climax of everything that it had been building up to was really good. I really enjoyed it. I don't really have much else to say. If you don't know what Assassin's Apprentice is about, where have you been? It's about Fitz Chivalry, who is the royal bastard, and his father decides to go into exile because he's ashamed that he has a bastard. And basically it's just the story of Fitz growing up, and like, he starts out in the stable as a stable hand, and he then starts to train as an assassin. It kind of just goes from there. He has the wit, which is a type of magical power where he can commune with like beasts. And he also has the skill, which means you can commune with humans. The royal line can all skill, they call it, and the wit is really looked down upon as like disgusting and beastly and blah blah blah. So that's kind of the premise. Again, it's just a lot of political machinations and Fitz growing up, really. I just started the sequel actually, and I'm really enjoying that, so Assassin's Quest! It's really good. After Merlin Readathon, or actually during Merlin Readathon, I read a book called Sugar Daddies on Kindle Unlimited, and everyone laughed at me because it got auto-posted to Twitter. I gave it, I think, 4 stars. It was pretty good smut. Nothing else really to it. I may have given it 3. I always say this, I'm going into smutty books at the end of the year instead of in each wrap-up, because some people don't give a shit about it. So, moving on. The next book that I read was Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell. You're welcome, Jade. I'm kidding. This I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I much preferred the latter half than the former. Didn't quite like it at the beginning. I was thinking, oh god, is this going to be like a 3-star meh? But Farias Parfax, who is the redhead lady, is very cool. I really like her. She is awesome, and I just really, really like this book. It did seem like a very similar voice to the Traitor's Blade series. Like, the main characters for me were almost like the same, but that's fine, you know. Sebastian de Castell writes a certain way that's really quite funny and witty and bantery and sarcastic, and he does it well, so I wasn't too mad at it. I enjoy his writing a lot, and I'm actually, the plot wasn't too bad. At the beginning I thought, I was like, oh, it's a bit predictable, but then it definitely wasn't predictable, second half onwards. Genuinely really enjoyed it, and came as a surprise. Next was the opposite, so I read The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chokshi, and this was a 5-star prediction for me. I have seen lots of people that I know, we have similar tastes, rate this 5 stars. I gave it 3. My rant is in my vlog, but nothing made sense in this book. The plot didn't make sense, the character decisions didn't make sense. I didn't like any of the characters or feel connected to them. In general, this was just a flop for me, and I'm so sad and mad about it. I really, really wanted to like this because it seems like straight up my alley. It's got puzzles in it, and I used to love the Dan Brown books when I was younger. So this is kind of like Dan Brown meets fantasy, to be honest, Illuminati type stuff with secret societies and action and predetermined relationships in here already, and angst that has happened before. But no, I genuinely, the first half of it was really good, and I was thinking, oh, it's a solid 4, and then it just went completely downhill. I'm pretty much sure I'm not gonna read the sequel, unfortunately. Next, I read my fave author, and that is Shauna Maguire. These do say A. Deborah Baker on. I've had a few comments on my vlog being a little bit confused about Shauna Maguire and A. Deborah Baker, so it's just a pen name. A. Deborah Baker is a character in Middle Game, and she wrote these books in Middle Game, in the story, so then Shauna Maguire has also written them outside of Middle Game. If that makes sense? I don't know if it does. So both of these I gave 5 stars. I was kindly gifted an arc from Tor of Along the Salt I See. It is out in October. I would not recommend reading these before you read Middle Game. They are not prequels. They are not standalones, really. They are standalones. It's a standalone series in itself, but you wouldn't get much out of them if you were just reading them simply as a middle grade portal fantasy story. You kind of need to have the Middle Game context for who these characters are, IRL, but IRL in Middle Game, if that makes sense. So this is the story of Avery and Zib, who one day get rerouted on their walks to school. They lived in the same neighborhood, but they've never met. Zib is a wild child, lives in the woods, likes to go get muddy, get dirty, and just run around all the time. Avery is a very sheltered child who is always prim and proper, always has his hair combed, etc., etc. Very opposite children, and they would never have become friends if not for the wall. So the Woodward Wall just gets in their way, and they used to start to climb it to try and go over it on their way to school. And when they get to the top and they look back over, it's just forest all around them. So they've been transported to a place called the Up and Under. This is a magical world where each quarter of the world is split into realms that are governed or or reigned by different kings and queens. So there are 4 quarters and obviously 4 kings and queens. So there's the Queen of Wands, the Queen of Swords, the King of Cups, and the King of Coins. Now, in Middle Game, these are like real people in real life in Middle Game, so it's like I say, it's difficult to read these on their own and get as much out of them. So Avery and Zib need to go along the improbable road to get to the impossible city where the Queen of Wands should be able to help them get home. However, the Queen of Wands has gone missing, so they now kind of have to go on a quest to get the Queen of Wands back, so that they can go home. And they can't go home without the other. They have to go home together. Nothing else much to say about these. I gave them both 5 stars. Shauna Maguire's writing, as usual, is absolutely perfect. It's chef's kiss. She is my favourite author. She has taken that spot, so yeah. Please read Middle Game and please read these. I think the 3rd one will probably come out next year. The penultimate book that I read was Frostheart by Jamie Littler. This is for Frostheart Along, which Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin is hosting. I was hoping to take part in Polathon this year, the weekend mini meltdown, but I hated reading on that weekend for some reason. Did not want to pick up a physical book, so I read Jade War on audio instead. I'll get to that next though. So I read Frostheart, obviously physically, and I gave it 4 stars. It was a 7 on Core Pile, which means it was just about a 4-star. I loved the world, loved the characters, but the writing did leave something to be desired for me. There was a lot of caps lock used near the climaxes and near the end, and there was a lot of exclamation marks where there didn't need to be exclamation marks, like just small things like that. And I do know it's a middle grade, so I suppose children, it's, you know, I don't know if middle grade editing / writing is meant to be more catered towards it, kind of like that, but you know, I love Nevermore. It's my favourite middle grade ever, and I feel like the writing isn't like that in Nevermore, so I don't know if it's just my limited experience with middle grades, but it really turned me off of the book and it took me out of the scene and out of the story. I did also find the story to be incredibly predictable. I did know exactly who was the villain and what he wanted to do and who he was, kind of thing, from the moment that we met him. It's not very subtly hinted at, and it's also not subtly hinted at that obviously Ash is going to take one thing and think it's someone else. Like, there's prophecy in this basically, and like a lullaby that he's following. I didn't even say what it was about. Oopsie. If you don't know what Frostheart is about, it is about our main character Ash. He lives in a settlement in like a polar world, and he is a song weaver. So that means he can sing and use that to control these things called leviathans. I don't know if you can use it to control people or anything else. That may come up in future, you know, the 2nd or 3rd book, I don't know. But for now, it's only leviathans, which are the things that chase people on the ice. Like, essentially, you shouldn't go out of your stronghold because you basically just, like, get fucked and you'll get murdered. So Ash can do that, but his settlement are, like, really scared of that because there's been rumours in the past that leviathans could also control song weavers the other way around if like they were too weak or something. It's just prejudice in general. A sledge called the Frostheart joins the settlement just to stop for supplies, and Ash basically begs them that if he can go with them to try and find his parents because they went missing when he was younger. And that is it. That is the premise of the book. But yeah, I gave it 4 stars. It was solid. I do genuinely like it, and I would like to read the sequel. The very last book that I read in August was Jade War, and I'm going to hold up Jade City for you because it's easier. I knew that this was going to be good. I gave Jade City 4 stars, but it was meant more like a 4.5. Jade City is a 1920s gangster fantasy set in a fantasy world called Cakon. Well, Cakon is the island that Jade primarily comes from, and the Kekanese are the natives of this island. So the Kekanese in particular are notoriously, they are the only race of people who can wear jade and use it to... It's kind of hard to explain what jade does in this series. It's got magical properties. They can use it as like kind of like a chi energy. It's definitely hard for me to explain, but they use it like deflections. They can like push the energy through people to kill them, etc. It's that's the basics of it anyway. Our main family, there are 2 clans in Caicon, and it is the Mountain Clan and the No Peak Clan. We follow the No Peak Clan and all of its members, so there's like Hilo, Lon, Shay, there's quite a few characters going on. Lon is the pillar of the clan, which means he's in charge, and basically the other clan, the Mountain Clan, are being dicks. They are trying to sell Jade to outsiders. They're trying to sell Jade to like the Espenians, who are basically colonizers and white people. I think the white people in the universe. Not sure if they're white or if they're just lighter skinned Asian people. Basically, it's the clans fighting each other and fighting for respect, for the control of Jade, the control of certain areas in Caicon, and also, there has been this drug created called SN1, and that allows anyone who is not Kekanese to use Jade, but it is incredibly dangerous. You can overdose really easily on it. It's like basically against their culture to like let someone else use it. So, but the Mountain Clan are like, yeah, whatever, we just want money, and like are selling SN1, creating SN1, trying to sell Jade to everyone. And the No Peak Clan are just like, what the fuck? And obviously the Mountain Clan really just want to take over and be the only ruling clan in Caicon. So it's mainly about the power struggle between these 2 clans, but the character and work is incredible. Like, I wouldn't even say there's loads of action in these books in terms of fighting or, you know, arguments or anything. There's a lot of political stuff going on. Honestly, it was so good. Jade War was even better than Jade City. I gave it 5 stars. And the audiobook is really good. The narrator is incredible. I highly, highly recommend the audiobooks. I'm really excited for Jade Legacy to come out in November. And I'm also going to be buying the Illumicrate versions because they are gorgeous. But yeah, in general, like, this is really good. And Jade Ward basically is the same book, but just continuing the story. And I know that sounds really weird, because surely that's the same as every other book. But I don't know how to explain what I mean by this. But this book had a lot of political stuff. And Jade War was the same, just with like the ante, like they upped the ante and upped the stakes. So it was just really, really good. And everything that was built up to, like every certain big action scene or thing that happened in Jade War that was built up to was just so good. I was like on the edge of my seat listening. Like, oh my God, like I had my hand over my mouth for like some scenes. It was incredible. It was so good. So yeah, that's my August wrap up. I'm really, really pleased with my reading this month. I had 5 5-star books. That's incredible to me. Doing amazing. Chopping down that physical TBR and just having a good time. I'm really hoping that September goes similarly. See you next month to find out. Give this video a like if you enjoyed, and make sure you subscribe so you get all that future content from me. Leave me a little jade, like emerald or something emoji in the comments if you got this far and you don't feel like you really have anything to say, but you just want to say that you were here. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!